Hi, welcome to today's video. My name's Paul. So today is watercolor landscape. If you've been watching my videos recently, you know I'm sort of alternating between watercolor and soft pastels these days. Like I say, this one's a watercolor. It's still an impressionist style painting, but it's going back to a style that I used maybe last year or so. So it's not that this year the paintings I've been doing I think are a bit more minimalist. This older style is I'm not sure what's the opposite of minimalist, a bit more fussy maybe. Also the paper I'm using is different. It is Arches paper. It is a good quality paper, but it's a much thinner paper. So usually I use 300 grams per square meter, which is 140 pounds. This paper is only 90 pounds, which is, I forget now, I think it's 180 grams per square meter, something like that. It is significantly thinner. I wanted to try it out. The big advantage of this paper is it's cheap. It is much cheaper than the heavier paper. And it is still an Arches paper, so it's still that same sort of textured surface, the rough surface that I like and sort of suits my style of painting. It is just, the only problem is it is much thinner. And the problem with that is if you're sort of new to watercolor, you haven't tried watercolor, the problem is that, as you maybe know, water and paper really don't mix very well together. So if you add water to paper, if you soak paper, the fibers inside the paper swell up, expand, and as they dry, they tend to sort of get all clumped up and tangled up together. And that causes the paper to buckle. So you'll get some parts of the paper where it's dipping down and other parts where it's sort of bubbling up. It just makes it's quite a difficult surface to work with. It's difficult to paint on. Now the camera, you can't exactly see the buckling. It is happening. If you look at the sort of the sky area, it looks as though there's streaks of purple, a couple of big streaks or patches of purple paint. There's no purple paint. It's just the paper is starting to buckle and you're getting a bit of a shadow forming on the paper, and the camera that I'm using can't really handle the low light levels, so it looks as though it's purple. You'll see in a minute or two the scan of the final painting. There's no purple in the sky at all. Other than that, it is a good paper. You maybe have to stretch it before using it. If you're not familiar with paper stretching, it's not difficult, it's just a time-consuming process. Basically, you have to take the piece of paper, you have to soak it in the bathtub or a large bucket or something. You take the soaked paper out, you put it onto a wooden board and you tape it down really tightly. And then as the paper dries, because it's taped down, it's sort of stretched, and therefore the fibers don't get all tangled up. They still stay reasonably nice. So then when you paint on it, once it's completely dry, you can paint on it, and at that stage hopefully you won't get the buckling, or at least not as much buckling as you would with the unstretched paper. The advantage of the heavier paper, say the 300 grams or more, is you don't really need to go through this whole process of stretching, so it's just more convenient. As I say, the stretching is just time consuming. It's really like an overnight process. This painting at the moment, I wasn't unhappy with it. I kind of like the foreground. The background, the hedges need more work. The problem is, and this is a problem that I sometimes have, I didn't stop here in the foreground. I kept messing with it and decided to go in and start adding or trying to add more details. and as you'll see, it gets more and more fussy and more paint added. And it is a lesson that I try to learn, and I can point it out to other people. Try not to overwork paintings. There's a point where you can sort of step back and say, okay, that's it, it's done. If you keep adding stuff, it can start to look overworked. And I think the final version of this painting is overworked. I started adding in these dabs of white paint and blue paint. I was trying to suggest wildflowers, that type of thing. Not sure if it completely worked, but that was the idea behind it. In terms of other things that are going on, I have been working on a little sort of booklet. It's not a book, it's just PDF file that I'm going to make available, and it's a collection of some of my paintings from this year and some sort of inspirational quotes that I've found from other artists, some famous artists, some not so famous, that might just help people, motivate people or inspire people maybe. And then just some of my own comments and things. It's quite short, but I'm going to make it available probably on the Gumroad website. If you're not familiar, Gumroad is a bit like, it's a little bit like Etsy. You know, you can sell sort of artsy things on it. Maybe the difference is that Gumroad is specifically more for artists and graphic designers, that type of thing, whereas Etsy can be more of a mixture and maybe more sort of craftsy type things. But anyway, I'll put more information about that in the next video. Okay, if you'd like to subscribe, just click on the big red button below, and hopefully see you in the next video.